We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Thursday afternoon edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Listen, I know it's late December. I know Christmas is coming. I could be crazy. I feel like our shows have been humming over the last couple weeks here in December. It feels like a slow time. It ain't a slow time. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to open. I will give my official college football playoff picks, all 4 games for this coming weekend. We did the college football betting pod on Wednesday, so my picks are out. I'll give them to you, what I think will happen in the 4 games this weekend. From there, we will talk about an interesting development in the world of NIL. Alabama AD Greg Byrne basically coming out on Wednesday and saying, please give us your money. We need your money or you're going to lose all your good players. So this is a new evolution in the world of college football. Speaking of new evolutions, the Diego Pavia story on Wednesday feel like it went a little bit under the radar, but I think this is a major story that has major ramifications as far as eligibility in college sports is concerned. Then from there, we'll take a quick break and do something different, okay? So Florida Sports Citrus CEO Steve Hogan will join us. Now, if you're not familiar with Florida Sports Citrus Bowl, basically he is the guy that runs the 2 bowl games in Orlando, specifically the Poptarts Bowl, which has made all sorts of headlines, the Cheez-It Bowl as well, but the Poptarts Bowl has made all sorts of headlines. The edible mascot last year. We have, of course, the toaster. If you haven't seen it yet, it's basically a trophy in the shape of a toaster. So he comes on, talks about the games, but really just the fun innovation that they have done to make those 2 bowl games so awesome. And by the way, he's got a couple great matchups this year. Miami, Illinois, and also South Carolina, Iowa State. So we're going to have him on. Then we'll come back and we'll probably wrap with something that we haven't done in a while. That's a little segment we like to call Aaron Right, Aaron Wrong. It's been forever, but this feels like a fun time to go ahead and revisit Aaron Right, Aaron Wrong. It's kind of towards the holidays. It'll be a fun way to wrap the show. By the way, right before we got on air, just saw something that Ohio State put out that I'm not sure is the best thing that they could have done in this moment as they get set to host Tennessee in the playoff game Saturday. So we have a loaded show. We have a busy show. Before we get started, listen, I'm just here to tell you, make sure you're subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. While all these other places are taking time off during the holidays, they're saying, well, whatever. We're done putting out content. We're going to go eat some cookies and milk and drink whatever. Guess what? Torres is rocking and rolling. You can listen on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Over 48,000 subscribers. I still have the goal. 50K before we get to 2025. Cannot do it without your support. So make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. Speaking of which, I just mentioned it. It's the holidays. You're sitting around, you're snacking. You want something healthy, but you want something that's delicious as well. And that's where our friends Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com come in, okay? So Collie Puffs is the new age alternative snack food in your grocery aisle. Forget the Fritos, forget the Doritos, forget the crap that's going to make you fat this holiday season, okay? It is holiday season. You're with family. You're watching probably more football. You'll be on the couch for some of these bowl games. And so I just bring it up because you're going to want something healthy but delicious. That's what Collie Puffs is, okay? Family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, who, of course, has become a great friend of mine. He's a football fan, and he basically was sitting around one day, said, I got to come up with some snack that is good, but isn't going to turn me into a slob while I watch football, something that my kids will like, something that I will like. He came up with Collie Puffs. These are baked, not fried. Healthy alternative ingredients. No avocado oil, no grease, all that good stuff. But here's the great part. Even though they're healthy, they taste freaking delicious. Don't take my word for it, though. You can try them for yourself. Visit ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com. Also, you can go ahead and try them on Amazon. So you're ordering stuff off Amazon. You're looking for something for the holidays, a gift, of this, or that. Just search Collie Puffs. You could throw them in your cart, try them for yourself. No extra shipping, no extra anything. Just try them on Amazon as well. Collie Puffs, the alternative, delicious, healthy new snack. We appreciate their support, and we'll be snacking on those Collie Puffs this holiday season. With that said, it is a busy Thursday show. There is no more time to waste. So let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. How about this? First time ever, Friday night into Saturday, we got ourselves some 12-team college football playoff games, baby. That is right. The 12-team playoff kicks off Friday night. And what I want to do, I did the college football betting show on Wednesday, gave out my official previews, my official picks. Again, if you want long form on this stuff, go ahead and search College Football Betting with Aaron Torres on Apple, Spotify, as well as YouTube. Today, though, I'm just going to give my quick picks and my quick thoughts on the games. We'll just go in chronological order because I believe that's probably the best and most efficient way to do this. Let's go ahead and start with the Friday night game. Listen, I love this. I love that we have a Friday night game. I love that it is in cold weather. By now, everybody's seen snow flurries. It's going to be below freezing in South Bend as Indiana visits Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a 7.5-point favorite. The over-under in this game is set at 52.5. So listen, first of all, I'll say this. We're going to talk a little bit about the Tennessee invasion of Ohio State in a second and maybe later in the show. But here's the truth. You look at ticket prices, this is the highest ticket, and I believe that you are going to see a lot of red in Notre Dame Stadium on Friday night. Obviously, a historic season for Indiana, an incredible run. And listen, Indiana obviously has fans all over the state. The two campuses are separated by about 3.5 hours. But Indiana fans are all over the state of Indiana. I think they're going to come out in droves. And I'm not saying it's going to be a neutral site game, but I think you're going to see a lot of red in that stadium like you did a few years ago when Georgia played Indiana. So that's the setup for this game. I think it's going to be fascinating. And I'll tell you this, I think it's going to be a little bit more competitive than a lot of people think. Bottom line, when this line came out, I was like, oh, hammer Notre Dame. They're awesome. I've talked on this show. I'm not going to put out like an official bracket, but Notre Dame is lined up to play Georgia in round 2. And I think Notre Dame actually could give Georgia trouble. Thing is, they got to get through this game first. And I think Indiana is going to give them a little bit more fits than people think. Why do I think that? It is because of a few reasons. One, Notre Dame's strength on offense goes right up against Indiana's strength on defense. Remember, what does Indiana do better than anybody? Number one, run defense in college football. Now, you can say, oh, they haven't played anybody. Doesn't matter, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Here's the truth. Go back to that Ohio State game. Everybody says that Ohio State-Indiana game was a blowout. No, it wasn't. Ohio State was basically gifted 14 points by Indiana, and Ohio State didn't break 300 yards of total offense until literally the final drive of the game. And so I bring it up because that run game was slowed down. Now, Indiana's offense certainly struggled against a very good Ohio State defense, but Indiana really slowed down Ohio State. They didn't break 100 yards rushing or 300 yards of total offense until the final drive when the game was essentially over, okay? And so I bring it up because you look at Notre Dame. They want to run the football. 108th in pass attempts this year in college football out of 134 teams. Riley Leonard has not thrown for over 250 yards all season. And I think this one could be a little bit close. I think it could be a little bit competitive. However, my official pick, my official best bet is in fact the under of 52.5. Now, it's worth noting this number is going up because we got it at 51.5 on the college football betting show. But I think I think it's going to be the under because Notre Dame's defense is elite. Indiana's offense has struggled against the two best defenses that they saw all year. It wasn't just Ohio State where they essentially could not move the ball. It was also, remember, Michigan 2 weeks before. Michigan, they scored a touchdown early, then they scored a touchdown to start the second quarter. They did not find the end zone for the final, 2.5 quarters of that game. They finished with 20 points, a couple field goals. Indiana really struggled to move the football against the two best defenses they saw all year. I think they're going to struggle again. I think Notre Dame does enough to win, but I don't know that this is going to be a blowout. I think this has like 20-13, 20-12, 21-7 written all over it. And so rather than taking the Notre Dame and the points, I'm going to go ahead and take the under. I will pick Notre Dame to win, but my official best bet is under 52.5. Let's keep it going. Saturday afternoon, noon Eastern on TNT. I remember talking on the show when TNT got these college football playoff games in the summer, how weird it's going to be to have college football playoff games on TNT. But I bring it up because it's SMU versus Penn State. Penn State, an 8.5-point favorite. The over-under in this game is 53.5. Now, it's worth noting, like Notre Dame, temperatures expected to be below freezing come kickoff. Also worth noting, precipitation expected in South Bend Friday night. Precipitation expected in State College on Friday night, which means we could have a wet, slick field on Saturday. With SMU, listen, I think it's interesting. I think so many people spend so much time just arguing about SMU versus Bama and that whole back and forth. I don't think anybody remembers that SMU against Clemson was sort of the better team for about 2.5, 3 quarters. Remember, SMU turned the ball over on the opening drive, led to an easy Clemson score. But the second half, SMU largely dominated. 24 points in the second half. They finished with well over 100 yards more offense than Clemson, even though they lost. Penn State, think it's very interesting to me. That Oregon game was like the outlier of all outliers, is that if I had told you that Penn State was going to be within a touchdown of Oregon, you would have assumed it was defense, it was ball control, it was whatever. Penn State finished with over 500 yards of total offense. They finished with like almost 300 yards rushing. They averaged 9 yards per, I think it was like 8 yards per carry, 9 yards per carry against Oregon. I don't know if that's replicable, especially in these weather conditions. And so my pick for this game, I actually do like Penn State, or I like Penn State and SMU. I like SMU to cover in this game. I like SMU plus 8.5. Why is that? One, the SMU run defense, is really good. Top 5 nationally. They held Clemson to 62 yards on 31 carries, something like that, 2 yards per carry. So they have had a great run game all year. I don't think James Franklin is going to open it up in cold weather, wet conditions, and oh, by the way, a game that he should win. We've seen James Franklin in close, tight games where pressure is on. What does he do? Curls up in that little turtle shell and tries to win every game 13-10. And so when you look at this game, SMU comes in with nothing to lose. Penn State sort of has everything to lose because they have such a nice draw in this bracket. They win this game, they're going to play Boise State in round 2. And so I just bring it up because there's actually a lot of pressure on Penn State in this game to get this victory. Penn State, in games where there's pressure, James Franklin usually doesn't open up the playbook. Like I said, I don't think this is let Drew Aller cook. I think Penn State wins. I think it's low scoring, but I like SMU plus the points. I'll say Penn State 24, SMU 20. Penn State wins and advances, but I think it's a little bit closer than people think. Let's keep it going to the late afternoon. Clemson at Texas, the only game obviously not impacted by weather. Clemson enters this one as an 11.5-point underdog. Texas, an 11.5-point favorite. The over-under set at 51.5. Couple thoughts here. One, let's just be honest. That Texas offense has not been good. You go back and look. Texas hasn't really played like a complete great game since the Oklahoma game in early October. Lose to Georgia. You think, okay, they'll bounce back after that. They survive Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia. We're going to talk about Diego Pavia in a minute. You look at after that, Arkansas was a struggle. Kentucky, they were in control, but they never really dominated. Texas A&M was close. I know that was a crazy environment, but 16-6, they're not dominating. And then, of course, what happened a few weeks ago against Georgia. And so when I look at this game, I think it's fascinating because to me, I just don't know what you should realistically expect from this Texas offense. And I think the bigger question is, what is the situation with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning? I said it after the Georgia game. I said it during the Georgia game. I said I didn't like in the first Georgia game deciding to switch to Quinn Ewers, deciding to not go to I didn't like benching Quinn Ewers in the first game. I thought it was all downside, zero upside. Best case scenario in that situation is that Arch Manning plays well. Then you got a quarterback controversy. But I bring it up because I said in the Georgia game, if you're going to bench Quinn Ewers in the first game, why are you not benching him in this game? So I'm curious if Arch Manning does get some playing time. He probably should. But I'm also curious how Clemson responds in this game. They like SMU, have nothing to lose. In terms of my pick, it's actually pretty straightforward. It's another under. I know unders aren't sexy, but here's the bottom line, is that Clemson, sort of one-dimensional. The defense is not great, but the offense really, one thing they do well is throw the football phenomenally. Cade Klubnik, 33 touchdown passes this year. I don't think people realize how good this kid was, over 3,000 yards passing. The issue is that Texas pass defense is number one in America. This is one of my favorite stats. Texas has almost a 5-to-1 interception to passing touchdown allowed ratio. Texas had 19 interceptions, 4 passing touchdowns allowed. So I don't know that Clemson can move the ball. I don't know that Texas is going to be able to move the ball because I think that offense kind of stinks. And so I think it's ball control. I think they run it a lot. I think Texas wins. I think it's somewhere, 24-13, something like that. But the under of 51.5 is my pick. I know it's not sexy, but I do like the under there. Really quickly, last game. Oh, and we'll be talking maybe a little bit more about this one here momentarily. I do want to talk about Tennessee at Ohio State. Tennessee, of course, enters this game on the road. We're going to talk about the big Vol invasion in a second, but Ohio State, a 7.5-point favorite. The over-under set at 46.5. First of all, the Tennessee invasion is a real thing. I think it went from kind of, is this really going to happen, to whatever. You had Ross Bjork, the AD at Ohio State, literally begging fans earlier this week, do not sell your tickets to somebody you don't know. They're probably a Vol fan. We've all seen on Twitter all the promo codes and discount codes, and if you use code Buckeye, you can get in, this and that. Ohio State has tried to limit it, but also Ohio State has not had very much success, because I know a lot of Tennessee fans that are going, and one thing about Tennessee fans is that it feels like, this season has been one that has been special, has been planned for. They've taken over other stadiums. I mean, even in the game they lost to Arkansas, I knew people at that game that were like, Torres, I could not believe how many Tennessee fans were at that game. So I just bring it up because there's going to be a lot of orange. And listen, we talked about it with Zach Smith a few days ago, is I think there's some real hostility in that city right now. And I think if Ohio State struggles out of the gate, I think there's going to be a lot of tension in that building. And I think there's going to be some boos for Ryan Day. So we could go break it all down and talk about, this matchup and that matchup. Listen, Ohio State has players. Nobody doubts that. But Ohio State had players against Michigan, lost at home. Ohio State, they've had good moments and bad moments, but in pressure games where the spotlight is on, they have historically struggled under Ryan Day. And I would also add this, the matchup just isn't good for Ohio State, because the biggest weakness that they have, 2 starters out for the year on the offensive line. Well, guess what happens? Tennessee's pass defense, pass rush is as good as anybody they faced, including Oregon and Penn State this year. And so to me, this is actually kind of an easy pick. My pick is pretty straightforward. I like Tennessee to cover. And I'll say this, I like Tennessee to win. I mean, take the 7.5 because I think it's a gimme. I know Nico on the road is, but Josh Heupel has been playing close to the vest games on the road all year long, relying on the defense, relying on the run game. I don't think the weather is going to be an issue for Tennessee. They play kind of cold weather football. They're one of actually the more northern SEC schools. So it's not like you're Miami, and I know Miami's not in the SEC, but it's not like you're Miami. It's not like you're Florida State. It's not like you're Florida. It's not like you're LSU, and you're going from 85 degrees to 30. Like Tennessee is sort of built like a cold weather team, is a northernish school. I don't think it's going to impact them. What I do think is going to impact someone is Ohio State, those fans, and what will happen if they struggle early. I think Tennessee wins. I'm going to take the points, but if I had to put a prediction on the game itself, I'll say Tennessee final score. I'll say Tennessee. It's been a common score that I've used. I'll say 24-20. I think both defenses are elite. Ohio State has leaned on that defense. I like Tennessee to win outright, but I say just take the points because I think 7.5 in the shoe. A lot of Tennessee fans, Ohio State fans, frustrated with the state of their program. I think that's a lot of points for Tennessee to have. All right. Great first show. Great first segment. This is what I want to do. Want to go ahead and take a quick break. Want to come back. When we come back, the chat is already humming. A lot of you have thoughts on this situation at Alabama. On Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, their AD basically put out a call to action begging fans for money. What does it mean for Alabama? Is Alabama broke? we got to talk about broke Bama. That's quick break. Be right back. Oh, we're discussing that next. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So want to go ahead and do a little bit of a follow-up from a topic that we discussed on Tuesday's Aaron Torres pod, because there has been a very interesting development. It is at Alabama, and it involves just a crazy time in the world of NIL. We'll get into all of, the big picture stuff in a minute, but the small picture stuff we talked about on Tuesday's show is that there was just a crazy NIL story, crazy portal story at Alabama involving a player named Jalen Mbakwe, okay? Jalen Mbakwe, former 5-star. You start to hear rumors Sunday into Monday. By the way, not rumors, great reporting by people on the ground. I don't want to discredit Charlie Potter and the guys that put out those reports. But basically, there were reports out that basically Jalen Mbakwe, who was a 5-star, was about to enter the portal for a number of different reasons. One, wasn't guaranteed a starting spot. 2, wanted to play both ways, kind of have that Travis Hunter moment in time. But 3, also because there was a reported 7-figure NIL offer on the table from another school for him to leave Bama and come play there. And what made it different was that this is a Bama kid. He's from the state of Alabama, grew up an Alabama fan from my understanding. And he did play as a freshman, was on special teams, returned kicks. And oh, by the way, I think he had like 15, 18 tackles on the season and certainly played significant snaps, even if he wasn't a quote unquote starter. Well, I bring it up because shortly after we did that segment, Alabama was able to convince Jalen Mbakwe to come out of the portal, but it doesn't change the fact that there was an interesting development since then, and it involved the Alabama AD. Alabama AD Greg Byrne, listen, I'll just be transparent. Had a few conversations with Greg Byrne off the record, saw him at the Final Four, whatever. He's always been very nice to me. Respect him, like him, appreciate. He's made some time for me, whatever. Seems like a very nice guy. I don't know him well. But I bring it up because he did something that I was actually a little bit surprised by on Wednesday afternoon. And he basically put out a call to action, basically begging Alabama fans to support the school with financial, incentive. Basically, let me backtrack. Basically, what he said was, "We need your money bad. We need your money bad, Alabama fans. Help us out, whatever." Producer Matt, why don't you pop up parts of his statement, parts of his tweet? I thought it was very revealing. This isn't even the whole statement. I'm just going to read some of it, and it's going to be a minute. He said, quote, "Alabama fans, over the last few years, there have been drastic changes in college athletics. We have been careful during this transitional period to protect our position at the top of college athletics while being mindful to listen, engage, and learn from our generous supporters, proud alumni, and unrivaled fans to make sure that we protect our great traditions here at Alabama. But there's a time for talk and a time for action. Now is time for that action." He continued, Although we have been competitive from an NIL standpoint, our competition has us in their sights and are actively trying to surge ahead with NIL. You have heard examples of other teams using promises of million-dollar paydays to lure away our players or convince them not to come to Alabama. It is time for Bama Nation to fight back. He continued. Under the new model of college athletics, which is the result of an antitrust lawsuit against the NCAA, a university can succeed if their fans purchase authentic NIL from student athletes. The good news is when Yay Alabama, that is their official collective, was created last year, the focus was on providing our fans with a legitimate product rather than booster inducements. Yay Alabama delivers exclusive content and access you cannot get anywhere else. We also have a plan to grow Yay Alabama's off-puttings, whatever, with more offerings. I'm sorry, I couldn't see it there. With more videos, features, and news in 2025. So, Greg Byrne, now that continued. Greg Byrne continued to have that conversation, continued with that tweet. But I'll tell you this, I find it very interesting that the AD is basically acknowledging, hey, teams are trying to tamper with our players. They're offering a lot and basically begging Alabama fans, if you are not giving, we are going to fall behind. It's interesting, but I think there's a bigger picture here as well. And that bigger picture is this. I think Alabama specifically, maybe more than any other school in college sports, is at a crossroads of who they've been as I knock over my mic and who they want to be. Let me make sure my mic's still on. Okay, my mic's still on. Producer Matt, everything sound good? Okay, cool. All right. So that was supposed to be a very cinematic moment where I talked about, what's the future of Alabama, and I kind of screwed it up by hitting my mic. So let me try that again. This is a crossroads moment for Alabama with who they've been, but also who they want to be. So let's dive into this statement from Greg Byrne. First of all, I'll say this. I found it sort of interesting that he basically acknowledged some of the stuff that came out in reporting and on message boards to Twitter, to social media. There's a lot of times where stuff happens behind the scenes. A player gets tampered with, a player gets offered this, a player gets offered that, and you see it on a message board, you see it in a report, but it's very rare that the school actually acknowledges it. So first of all, shout out Greg Byrne, just like, yeah, that's the truth. This is what we're dealing with. And what he basically acknowledges, like, we are fighting this on all fronts, and we need basically all hands on deck. What's interesting, though, is Alabama is a totally unique outlier in this situation for a couple of reasons that I think are completely unique to Alabama. I think, first of all, Alabama, to me, feels a little bit more susceptible to the current landscape of college football and college sports for a few reasons, but part of it is out of their control. One, they're not in the playoffs. So I just think it's harder to get guys off of Georgia right now, Texas right now, Oregon right now, because those teams are still competing for a national championship. So Alabama's not in the playoff. They have as talented a roster as anybody. And what's also worth noting is most of those guys were not recruited by Kalen DeBoer. So if you don't think other schools and other coaches are getting on the phone with these kids or getting on the phone with their agents or whatever and saying, you didn't sign up to play for this guy? You sure he's the guy? You sure you trust your future? You sure this is who you want to put your entire livelihood in his hands? Because I'm not sure if I would if I was you. So Alabama's dealing with the fact that there's a lot of guys that might be loyal to Bama. I don't know how loyal they are to Kalen DeBoer, and that's not a knock on Kalen DeBoer. It's just the reality of the situation. Every guy at Ohio State committed to play for Ryan Day. Every guy at Ole Miss committed to play for Lane Kiffin. Every guy at Georgia committed to play for Kirby Smart. That's not the case at Alabama. But what's also interesting is that there's a few dynamics that I think are really working against Alabama. One, and we talked about this on Wednesday's show. Okay, give me one sec. Give me one sec here. All right, I want to put out a tweet here. Sorry about that. Okay, so we talked about this on Wednesday's show. Okay. And on Wednesday's show, we talked about why the dynamics at Alabama are a little bit different. First of all, what's really interesting, and you talk to people in and around college sports, they'll tell you point blank, end of story. Like, Alabama is one of the unique SEC schools in that they just don't have a huge booster base of just millionaires that are willing to give. It's interesting. I was thinking about this on Thursday morning, knowing we were going to talk about this on the show. You look at most SEC schools, most SEC schools, you kind of know who are the really big boosters that are giving a lot of money and continue to give money year over year over year. Arkansas, obviously the Tyson family. We learned all about the Chicken Man during the basketball portal and John Calipari coming to Arkansas. Tennessee has the Haslam family that's been given for years and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Kentucky has the Kraft family. Now, Kentucky, they'll tell you maybe we don't have the volume of boosters that other schools do, but the Kraft family has consistently given money year over year over year over year. Texas A&M, huge booster base, a lot of oil money. We know about them. Texas, huge booster base, a lot of oil money. We know about them. That's not the case at Alabama. By the way, Auburn, Jimmy Rain. I mean, I think it's a little bit of inside baseball, but Alabama fans will tell you, Auburn fans will tell you, most wealthy man in the state of Alabama is an Auburn guy, not an Alabama guy. That matters. And so Alabama is in a situation where they just don't have those 2, 3, 4 families that they can rely on year over year over year. But two, what I think is the bigger issue is the fact that we also have to remember this about Alabama, is that they got away with basically, when NIL started, being on a discount because they had the greatest coach in the history of college football working for them. And you ask anybody in college football, there were a lot of guys over the last 2, 3, 4 years that took the quote unquote Saban discount that basically said, and we talked about this on Wednesday's show again, that basically said, you know what? Here's the bottom line is I can go, what was the old saying? NFL over NIL, right? I could go to fill in the blank school and get a bag. I could go to A&M or whoever and get a bag, Miami and get a bag. But if I go to Alabama, Nick Saban in 3 years is going to have me ready for the first round. And so now that Nick Saban's gone, you're not getting discounts. Players don't necessarily have loyalty to DeBoer, et cetera. You don't have the money that other schools do. And I just think this is an interesting inflection point for Alabama. I think the scary thing for Alabama, I don't really know how this whole situation gets better. Now, one, I know we have rev share coming in this coming year, not to bore people, but schools will be able to pay players directly. But this idea, and I think the NCAA is wrong on this, the NCAA is going to try to eliminate collectives. And I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't know how you can limit someone's market and market value, and opportunities to make money. It's literally anti-constitutional. And we're going to talk about that in a minute with Diego Pavia. So even if every school can give out 20, 25 million, whatever the number ends up being, and we think it's going to be 20 for next year, it isn't to stop John Smith or Aaron Torres from saying, hey, here's another 500,000 because I really like this quarterback out of the portal. The NCAA can't stop that. And so you have that. The other thing that I was thinking about, I think there's this notion that at some point levels are going to set with NIL. In other words, like we're going to hit a market cap, like guys are just there's going to be at some point these schools just aren't going to be able to raise the money and there's just not going to be the money and the numbers are going to go down. And to a degree, I believe that's right. But I don't know that I really believe that the numbers are going to go down. And let me explain why. It's because there's always going to be a new school that has not won that believes they have the coach or they have a coach that convinces the people that matter, hey, if you give me money, we got to spend money to get the best players. And it can either be a new coach like Josh Heupel a few years ago at Tennessee, or it could be a coach that's kind of struggling right now that's like, dude, we need new players fast or we're going to stink. Look at what LSU's doing right now. LSU's added probably 10, 12, 15 players in the portal already. That's a direct reflection of Brian Kelly basically being like, we're not good enough. We need to go out and overspend to get the players that we need to make a difference in this program. But you've also through the years had schools like Miami, schools like Tennessee, schools like Texas A&M that feel like they're on the brink and they're willing to overspend. Ole Miss coming into this year, it was a big conversation. Ole Miss raised a ton of money because they believed they were on the precipice of a college football playoff berth. And so I just bring it up to very simply say, I don't know how this gets better for Bama. The other thing that I should have mentioned, I think a lot of those boosters through the years have been like, well, we want a lot without having to give anything more than our tickets and our donations and our this and our that. And why are we going to start now? It's like, well, because the game has changed. You don't have Nick Saban. It's just a fascinating story. And I thought this was a fascinating topic to discuss because Greg Byrne, to see an AD come out the way that he did and discuss this, kind of shocking to me, but kind of the reality of the new world of college football and where we are. By the way, I see Auburn fans chiming in saying, yeah, they're broke, whatever. So Alabama's broke. They're not. Alabama fans are going to get mad at me for this segment, but it's a fascinating topic that I think is worth discussing. And was certainly a fascinating tweet from Greg Byrne just the other day. All right, let's keep it going. And I'll say this, I saw another topic that I will be honest. When I first saw it, it didn't really interest me. But then I'll also be transparent is that as time went on, I thought this actually became a very interesting topic, and I do think we need to discuss it. And it is the status of Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia. Okay. So Diego Pavia is a player, has kind of come on everybody's radar, except for Auburn fans. Sorry, producer Matt. But, Auburn fans knew about Diego Pavia a year ago. For the rest of us, we all kind of got to learn about his story over the last couple months, because this was a kid, started his career at junior college, goes to junior college, then goes to New Mexico State, has success at New Mexico State, transfers up to Vandy. And I think he became one of the faces of college football this year. Vandy has not been good. They've struggled. They've this, they've that. Well, they beat Alabama in late September, early October, whatever it was. They're going to a bowl game. This guy becomes a star. And I think he's just kind of become a star. Well, I bring it up because about 3-4 weeks ago, I saw a report that he was basically fighting the NCAA, suing the NCAA to get an extra year of eligibility. And I didn't really think much of it at the time. But on Wednesday, we got clarification that Diego Pavia has won an injunction, and he will, as of now, be eligible to play college football for next season. Now, what's interesting is this. It's not just the traditional red shirt. It's not just, I played this many games, give me a red shirt, whatever. What Diego Pavia's lawyers argued, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've done enough research to kind of at least wrap my brain around it. What they've basically argued is pretty straightforward. They basically argued, look, this kid spent 2 years at a junior college, or 1 year or whatever. Junior college should not count against the calendar and the cycle, and your NCAA eligibility clock should not start once you go to junior college. So essentially, basically, I think everybody knows, but you have 5 years to play 4 in college sports. So basically, you can take a red shirt, but you get 5 years to play 4 in college sports, and then your eligibility expires. And so basically, what Diego Pavia's lawyers argued was that his junior college year should not count towards his eligibility because it is unfair to him. It limits his NIL opportunities. And this is a kid that obviously can make millions of dollars by coming back to college football next year. So the courts ruled that he has an extra year of eligibility. And this is where it gets interesting. It basically opens the door for pretty much anybody who plays junior college to play eligibility-free football or basketball or tennis or golf or whatever. And it doesn't count against your eligibility clock. And so essentially this Diego Pavia ruling, now it's only for Diego Pavia right now, but obviously this opens the floodgate for anyone else who went to junior college to make the same argument. Basically, that if I go to junior college for 2 years, it shouldn't count against my NCAA eligibility. And so the idea being that you could have a kid come out of high school at 18 years old, go to junior college for 2 years, and then enter college as a 20 to 21-year-old freshman. If this thing stays, it is insane. It opens up a whole new can of worms as far as eligibility clocks are concerned. And I think it's a situation that could reshape college sports as we know it. So I know this sounds like hyperbole. And like I said, when I initially saw this story, I didn't think that much of it. But the one thing I will say is that what I have learned in all my years covering college sports is pretty straightforward. If there is a rule that is going to help coaches get good players on their roster, retain good players on their roster, they are going to abuse that rule into oblivion. Okay, let me give you a quick example. Remember, that you might not remember, but I remember about probably I can do the math in my head. It was 18 years ago now. Okay. Urban Meyer leaves Utah to take the Florida job. And there was this obscure rule that nobody knew about. It was called the grad transfer rule. You're probably familiar with it, but nobody had ever used the grad transfer. But what Urban Meyer found in the college football, the NCAA rule book, was that if you were a graduate, you did not have to sit out a year when you transfer. And so what does Urban Meyer do? He brings one of his best players who has transferred that still has eligibility from Utah with him. And I believe the kid stayed 2 years and was a cornerstone on a national championship team. Now the grad transfer, even before, the 1-year transfer rule changed, the grad transfer just became a thing, right? Now all of a sudden coaches are manipulating everything to get grad transfers in. I remember hearing stories, and I still think it's true. Players would refuse to show up for summer school, or coaches would try to not let players show up for summer school because they were basically like, if you come to summer school, you're going to graduate in 3 years and you're going to go somewhere else. Now it's less of an issue now, but I bring it up because coaches are always looking to manipulate the rule books. And I'll just say this JUCO thing sets up a whole other can of worms of possibilities. Okay. So I heard Coach JB talk about this on Thursday morning, okay? So Coach JB, if you're not familiar, he was the head coach, Netflix, Last Chance U. If you remember Last Chance U, it was following junior college teams around. It was on Netflix. He was a coach there. He did it for 2 seasons. He's now in the media. I heard him talking about it, and he just brought up an interesting idea about what now happens to junior college. And producer Matt, I don't need the tweet yet, but I'm going to set this up. And what I want to do is explain what Coach JB said. What Coach JB said is basically this could change basically college football forever, because think about it like this. You could just have schools essentially use junior colleges as minor league developmental programs, right? So let me give you just an example, and I'll try to keep big schools out of it. Let's just say I'm Aaron Torres. I run Aaron Torres Junior College in Connecticut, okay? So let's say I run Aaron Torres Junior College in Connecticut. There's nothing from stopping UConn football, let's just use UConn, from sending 25, 30 players there that they know are not going to play. And have those players 35, by the way, it doesn't have to be 25 or 30. It could be 50, it could be 100, it doesn't matter. Send them to junior college for a couple years. Let me develop them at Aaron Torres Junior College, and then they could then go to college as a 21-year-old freshman, basically using JUCO as a 2-year developmental process. Thought it was also interesting, Coach JB said, and producer Matt, this is where you can pull up the tweet. Think about this scenario. The scenario of a kid goes to college. Maybe he redshirts as a freshman. Maybe he plays as a sophomore. Maybe he's not really happy with where he's playing, or maybe he's not as developed as he thought. He can go to junior college, and now what will happen, according to this ruling for Diego Pavia, it stops his eligibility clock. So basically what we're talking about is you could go redshirt for a year, you could maybe play for a year. Then after 2 years of college football, you could go to JUCO for 2 more years. It doesn't count for your clock. You could come back 2 years later and have 3 years of eligibility left at 22, 23, 24 years old. So this is just a new way to manipulate the system, a new way to get older players in college football. And again, if you don't think that these coaches aren't going to find creative ways to manipulate this rule if it goes into full effect, you just don't know what's coming. It's interesting is that, listen, like I said, people are always trying to think of new ways. This is going to be a thing if the NCAA, more importantly, the courts. I think, what ends up happening is these judges get these rulings, and these judges get these cases in front of them. They don't realize the implications that are going to happen when you change a rule of this magnitude. And so it just becomes fascinating to me because, again, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility you're seeing 20, 21-year-old freshmen with 4 years of eligibility. I'll tell you this, there's been kind of an interesting side story to this in college basketball, where over the last couple of years, European players are starting to come over, but in the past, European players, let me even backtrack. Okay. So with basketball players from Europe or South America or whatever, if they played professionally prior to 3-4 years ago, obviously they weren't NCAA eligible. Okay. Well, the NCAA rules changed. Now they're eligible. And what we've seen the last couple of years, we have schools now bringing over 21, 22-year-old kids and try to get them in as freshmen. We saw it this year with Big Z's brother at Illinois. And I'm not here to pick on Illinois because other schools have done it. I think BYU has a kid, Boscovich, who's like 21, 22 years old. They brought him over this summer. They brought Big Z's brother over this summer in Illinois, and they basically said, yeah, he's a freshman. It's like, no. And the NCAA, to their credit, basically said, we're going to take off a year of eligibility. And at first, everybody fought it. And then I think everybody realized, wait a second now, we can't just open this Pandora's box, because what's to stop bringing over a 23-year-old, a 24-year-old and claiming he's a freshman? So I could go on and on, but the only point I'm trying to make, this is another crazy twist. The NCAA, man, like they just can't catch a break. They just can't catch a break. It's crazy to me, But this Pavia situation, I think, opens up a can of worms. And obviously, it's going to, if it takes effect for all JUCO players, it's going to have impact on every sport, not just college football, basketball, gymnastics, whatever. But like I said, I don't think there's a world too far in the future where we could be using JUCOs basically as minor leagues to develop players and then send them to college at 21, 22 years old as true freshmen. It's absolutely crazy, but it is what it is. Producer Matt asking a great question. Does this mean that Cam Newton has some degree of eligibility left? It's a great question. I mean, 2 at Florida, but I think 1 was a he might have like 2 or 3 years of eligibility left. But this is, by the way, I feel bad for the NCAA because everybody wants to blame the NCAA for everything. They try to fight this stuff. They just get their brains beaten in court. But it's like, that's this world, is that the NCAA can't win anything. They get their brains beaten in court. You know, the courts don't realize the impact that this could have. Let me put it to you that way. And by the way, let me lastly say this. The people that get hurt are the high school players. I mean, every year, the value of a high school player is going down and down and down and down and down. I don't think it's any different in football and basketball. Basketball, I mean, look at these programs. A lot of them don't even recruit freshmen anymore. So it's a crazy new world. Diego Pavia, of all people, may have opened a Pandora's box, and I don't think it slows down. All right, so this is what I want to do. I do want to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have a fun guest on. So Steve Hogan is the CEO of Florida Citrus Sports. What is Florida Citrus Sports? They are the event planners. They're the people that put on the game, the Poptarts Bowl, and also the Cheez-It Bowl, okay? And I think what they've done, what those 2 bowl games have done as well as anything, is they've kind of embraced that if you're not a college football playoff game, that it's okay to have a little bit of fun, that not everything has to be, whatever. And so obviously the Poptarts Bowl last year had the edible mascot. This year they have the trophy shaped like a toaster. By the way, the Poptarts Bowl will be next Saturday featuring Iowa State and Miami. And then on top of that, 2 days later will be the Cheez-It Bowl, which has South Carolina and Illinois. So a couple really good games. Cam Ward, last I saw, is planning on playing. Obviously, Lenora Sellers will play in his game. Dylan Stewart will play in the South Carolina game. I did see Kyle Kennard opted out. But Steve Hogan's going to join us. We're going to talk a little bit about the Poptarts Bowl. How does he come up with all this crazy stuff? The games themselves. We'll take a quick break, come back. Steve Hogan joins us. And by the way, I'll come back on the back end because I do still want to do Aaron Right, Aaron Wrong, and a couple other things to end the show. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions. All right, joining me via Zoom. Listen, fun time of year if you're a college football fan. College football playoff bracket, as we are recording, was just released, but that also means that we found out the full postseason schedule, and a place that has become really a hub for postseason college football over the last couple of years. Orlando, Florida, home of the, home of course, the Citrus Bowl, and of course the Poptarts Bowl, the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, I should say, and the Florida Citrus Bowl CEO. I'm sorry, I'm tripping over my words here, Steve Hogan. The point I'm trying to put on, you put on two awesome college football games every single year, the Cheez-It Bowl, the Pop-Tart Bowl. So I appreciate you making some time and giving us some insight onto how this process works and all that.
No, thanks for having me. It's my favorite time of year, right? We get a little bit of holiday mixed in there and in the middle of all this football. So it's going to be a glutton. I love it.
Well, listen, first of all, I got to ask you about the edible Pop-Tart here down the road, but let me start. What is the last, first of all, I know it's a year-long process, but when does it really ramp up? Because you mentioned, I mean, you're hosting two major games during the holidays. Obviously, I'm sure you're doing, visits to campuses, right around the Thanksgiving time, all that. When does your schedule and your staff schedule really get busy to kind of ramp up for these two awesome games that you're going to be hosting?
Yeah, I mean, we're a little unique. We're the primary tenant at Camping World Stadium, and also, we're a sports entertainment company. So, I mean, just a few weeks earlier, we host the largest historically black college and university game with Florida A&M Bethune-Cookman, Florida Blue Florida Classic, and actually, as we speak, we've got, probably 26,000 room nights filled with Pop Warner Super Bowl and Cheer National Championship.
Wow.
Team visits, two bowl games, NFL Pro Bowl a few weeks later. And then we got 3 international soccer matches. So we never quit. But the bowl job, really, it's year round. I mean, we have probably 300 scouts. We're at every SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12 game if we can be at home in any given week. It's a relationship business. You know that. You're out there working those relationships. You're always selling sponsorships. You're always selling tickets. You're always servicing your local base because you need probably 30% of them to get the crowd where you need it. If you're doing your job right, 65 to 70% of those fans are going to come from somewhere else, and the whole thing works. So, but it's a year-round job. It really is. But we just happen to do so much more than just the postseason of college football.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and I've talked to people in similar positions, and I know it's a year-round job, but I just have to imagine. Let me ask you this. So the 12-team college football playoff, did that help your process, hurt your process? Because it was worth noting, the committee kind of said 2 weeks ago, hey, anybody who's not playing on championship weekend, it really doesn't, there's really no opportunity for them to move into the top 12. And so, you're featuring two games. Obviously, the Poptarts Bowl has Miami and Iowa State. Iowa State, of course, could have gotten an automatic bid, but they do not. Miami would have been in the conversation, but they obviously the last week we're told that they can't really make a move. And it's the same with South Carolina, who's going to play Illinois in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl on December 31st. So that's a mouthful. But does it help you? Does it hurt you? Not only a 12-team playoff, but the committee kind of being transparent of, it's going to be hard for a South Carolina, an Ole Miss, who's obviously not part of your event, but a Miami, et cetera, to move up into that top 12.
Yeah, I don't know that it does. If anything, the bowl system, the postseason has evolved. My entire career, I mean, from the coalition to the bowl championship series, 2 to 4 to 12. Who knows where we go next? And those whether it was computers or humans, it's just part of it. And we've been blessed to have a lot of success. We're 8 decades in the postseason. The Citrus Bowl is one of the Cheese Citrus Bowl is one of the 7 oldest games in the country. We're proud of that tradition and that history. But, when you pick first after all of these systems that I just mentioned historically in the SEC, the Big 10, the ACC, second in the Big 12, you're going to have teams that either were just in or just out, 2 and 3 of them in a year like this, and you're going to have to make a decision around that. So it's just part of the business. It's a good place to be because we have 10-win teams in one game and ranked high, as we do in the Cheese Citrus Bowl, 2 9-win teams that one of which was right on the edge of being in the playoffs. So we're excited about that. We're excited about where that's going to take us in the future. The ratings are strong, have been for a long time. People are watching. I mean, it outperforms many postseasons in the sports world. And so, it's just, I think people love it. It's just part of our holiday. If we go to 14, if we go to 16, winning teams, though, for us, winning teams matter. Ranked teams matter. And I think there's always going to be a little bit of room for that around the system that we play.
Well, yeah, no, and that was one thing. I'm a college football diehard. I love the bowl structure. I love the games at the end of the year, like you said, whether it's 2, 4, 12, whatever. People watch these games. People care about these games. Let me ask you, like, How excited are you? And I hope this doesn't come off as a negative for Iowa State and Illinois because they're two great programs who had 2 great years. But South Carolina and Miami were right in the thick, right until the end. And this isn't a win-loss record thing, but I think those are two teams that, listen, like you said, people always watch your games, but I think people are going to be really intrigued to see, okay, how would South Carolina have matched up if they had gotten whoever in the college football playoff? So how excited are you, again, with no disrespect at all intended for Iowa State or Illinois, to have two teams that I think people are really curious to see, especially after the snub of the last couple of days?
Well, and Iowa State was, Illinois
Yeah.
for that matter was a win away. I mean, Iowa State was in the game. You win that game,
Right.
you're in. I mean, so these are all teams that were in playoff mode, for the last few games of their season, really all year long, and they were all in the rankings for the most part all year long. So I'm excited to see it. I'm also excited to see some of the trends shift. Sellers is going to be special to see,
Yes.
at Carolina. Cam Ward would be special to see. I was super excited to see, Dion and his son, and I think Cam and Shador were on social together, and Cam was telling Shador, I am going to put a show on tape in the Poptarts Bowl. We are going to light it up. We are going to throw the ball the entire game. He goes, I got one more game to play. And if you heard Dion's comments, and I
I
think it's
loved
just that
him.
old school mentality. He's like, no, our kids have one more game to play, and he expects Shador and Travis and everybody to play. And so I think there's something to that, and that's what I'm excited to see. We're going to see these stars on the field, and they seem motivated to say, I'm going to show the people making decisions in the NFL what I'm about. If there's a game to play, I want to play it, and I'm going to put on a show, and that's what you're going to get if you draft me into your locker room.
No, I did see the Dion comments after their final regular season game. I loved it. I'll be honest, you're breaking news to me. I had not seen Cam Ward's comments. But listen, I think obviously Orlando is going to be a great showcase for him. Let me ask you this: you play the games relatively back to back. Miami, Iowa State, excuse me, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, December 28th. South Carolina, Illinois, the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, December 31st. Is there any sort of overlap? I mean, first of all, I assume it's probably about 12 days of insanity, but is there any overlap there? How does that whole process work?
There's a little bit, they're in town together. The beautiful thing about Orlando, we have 75 million visitors a year.
I've heard, yeah.
In any given week, there's millions of people in town that, don't know other people are there. And so, yes, the teams are there. They all have separate facilities. We have probably 130,000 hotel rooms. They're having completely separate but equal experiences. I mean, we invest heavily in the student athlete and fan experience there. We want it to be very much a college football playoff atmosphere and experience in terms of the quality of their hotels, the quality of their hospitality suites. But they're there, but they don't really see each other. And we've heard that for years now. We've had 2 games for a long time now, and both of them say, you would think normally that it's going to feel like one game is near the other or around it or in the shadow of or whatever. None of that exists.
Yeah.
It's and I think that's just the town. The town is that kind of town. It's that big. All the theme parks, all the hotels, and so I'm excited about that. And I want in the future. I wish they were like a day apart. We could put a concert in between the two of them, and we'll have the best showcase. If you just love college football and you love country music or anything else, whatever it is, I'd love to put on a 3-day show that might be unique in the future. Who knows?
Let me ask you a dumb question that I may just be grasping at straws here, but I'm thinking about it. UCF just reintroduced Scott Frost as their head coach. We're recording here the day after the playoff bracket and the bowl games were announced, and Scott Frost just talked about how exciting the present is of UCF in the Big 12, but also the future. I know Florida has been forever college football country with the Gators, the Canes, and of course the Seminoles. Has UCF's rise done anything for interest or excitement about college football in that area, or has that always just kind of been the way that it is?
Absolutely. I mean, they've when Scott was there the first go around, I mean, announced his presence, an undefeated season, the big bowl win, obviously, Coley Matrix national championship
Yep.
and all that jazz, but a lot of noise and the quality of the football there for a long time has been good. And if you look back, I'm actually, full disclosure, I'm a UCF night earlier in my life, and some of the guys on the team back then were played in Super Bowls and the NFL. So the talent in the state is rich. I mean, it's like Texas and California and other parts of the country. UCF has an opportunity, and the facilities continue to grow. They've added to that. Florida, they went up and played a game in Florida this year, and that was a hot game for a minute there. And Florida took care of business, and so I think you're going to continue to see that happen. I think there's 4 teams in the Power 4 right now in our state, and UCF's going to continue to make some noise.
How about we talked about the player experience? What about the fan experience? I know Iowa State was in Orlando a few years ago for one of the 2 games, but I think was South Carolina there too? I seem to
Been a
remember.
few years, but
Yeah,
yes,
okay, okay.
we had them. We had them with Steve, and had some good games.
What was so South Carolina hasn't been there for a while. Iowa State was there, but what can fans that are coming down expect for each of the 2 games? I assume the experiences for fans are pretty similar, but if there's any difference for either game, I'd love to kind of hear.
Yeah, no, they are. I mean, the players, of course, as you know, and the families and official parties. I mean, we're giving them access to the town. I mean, they're getting to go to theme parks and do all that fun stuff. But so are the fans. We try not to over program this with a big kickoff lunch. We learned years ago they come to Orlando because it's Orlando. Let's let them
Sure.
go to Orlando if they're in town for 3 days. A pep rally is really important. The fans want to be together. They want to be the band and the spirit squad. They want to hear coach, couple of players, and so we do that. Day before the game, we'll be at Point Orlando, down in the heat of that International Drive district, and it's there's a lot of energy around that. And we'll get together with the kids, with the teams actually together jointly. Sometimes you'll have fans proximate to that, but kids in our neighborhood and around the stadium, and kids in our market that get an experience for 2 hours at Fun Spot, great theme park there in town, and just go be kids with these student athletes is really cool. The fans are around some of those things, but for the most part, Fan Fest all day long on game day, huge hospitality, pavilions and centers, and the game. So we let them go do Disney, Universal, and all the other things, and try not to throw them a whole bunch of manufactured events.
No, that's fantastic. Obviously it's such a great city to visit. Real quick, you mentioned this off the top. The college football postseason is continuing to evolve. Um, you know, I personally would like to see how a 12-team playoff looks before we have to blow it up and start over, but it seems to be that everybody has some complaint about it. I guess that's natural. But obviously, as this thing continues to evolve, I just feel like it's probably going to expand, and there's probably going to be more opportunities for cities like Orlando to host. I mean, is that something? No disrespect to the games that you currently have, but working these games into that rotation, doing something as part of the playoff, because it does feel like this playoff is going to expand, and it does feel like the neutral site model is what the committee seems to want, or the powers that be in college football seem to want to stick with.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, look, when we had no teams in the playoff to 2 teams to 4 teams to 12 teams, that's what it's going to expand at some point. When, I'm not sure, but it just, you can't help yourself. I think there needs to be a balance. I hope there's a balance as we move on, because I think there's a lot of really successful teams at the end of the year. And when you have this many teams in the country, it's really hard to have, it's not like 32 in the NFL and you're trying to get the comparable regular seasons together. Therefore, you're rewarding those playoff teams. But these schedules are all over the place. And if you want to involve all 130 or 40 or 50 D1 programs, your FBS programs, you're gonna need to have some access. So it should expand. We would love to be a part of it if it does. The NFL Pro Bowl has chosen Orlando 6 out of 8 stateside, lower 48 since leaving Hawaii Pro Bowl games for a reason, right? I think the market works. The hospitality assets and infrastructure are there. We will not be shy about being an investor. If they open that door, we will try and kick it in as best we can and give our city an opportunity. We've invested now over the next 2 seasons. When we're done with this, we'll be right at about $700 million plus in finishing Camping World Stadium's campus, adding 150,000 square foot indoor facility adjacent to the facility, fixing all of the lots and the experience outside and inside the building. We're proud of where our competitiveness is going to be in late 26, early 27 and beyond. I hope we get to host the NFL Jags that whole season, and we'll show off. And we're ready. We're ready. I hope they do. And if they let us in, we're going to be ready for it.
That's what I was going to say. So obviously the Jaguars going through some, construction of their own. So I was reading there's a possibility that Orlando, the Citrus Bowl, could be a potential host for the Jaguars down the road.
Yeah, we talk quite regularly. It's no secret. It's been in the news a lot in our marketplace, and they'll take a hard look at Gainesville, and they'll take a hard look at our place and land the plane here. We hope by the end of the year or first quarter for sure. The NFL owners will need to make that decision, I think, ultimately. So it's probably take a little bit of time into the first quarter before it's final. But that'd be a lot of fun. I think it'd show Orlando, if we were blessed to have that, have a full season there, let them see that it's an NFL city. It's already bigger than a lot of the lower end of the in terms of the DMA sizes of the existing NFL towns. So when you think of the size of Orlando and the market that it is, it's what, number 16 in the country. So we're excited to show that we could do that. And I think a season like that would show the college football playoff. It would show a whole host of people. We're already hosting Real Madrid and Manchester United and Barcelona to sold out stadiums. We're hosting Pro Bowls to sold out stadiums. LSU, Florida State to kick off the season last year to a packed house. I think we're the best destination that's not in right now. We love that chance.
Don't mean to be disparaging what happened in Tampa. Dual stadium Tampa Bay Rays games at all? Is that a possibility? We
Let's
breaking
go.
news here?
Anything's possible.
Yeah,
But
listen.
for money, we can figure it out. I mean, they did it in Miami for a really long period of time down there, and with with the Marlins and the Dolphins. But you don't know. It looks like they're trying to figure some things out over there in St. Pete, Tampa. You'd need a couple $2 billion to do that right. I don't know that that's there right now with such a short porch, but you'd love to see them stay in the state. Baseball's got a lot of dates. Sometimes it's a tough product from a ticket sales standpoint, but
Sure.
We'll never know. Never say no to anything.
Never say no to anything. Well, you talk about never say no to anything, never say no to any idea. Let's get some details, on the great innovation that is the edible mascot, because this swept the internet about a year ago. Of course, Strawberry, the famous Pop-Tart mascot that was then edible. Listen, I don't. Is there anything that has had a higher approval rating, like in the history of the world? You can't get the internet to unite on anything, and everybody was like, "That is the most awesome thing that I've ever seen." What was the reaction? Was it your idea? Can you take credit for it? Are you the Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell of edible mascot? I mean, where did this come from, and how did you execute it?
Look, it's totally my idea. I mean, nobody else was involved. I sat in a room. I worked this out. We all know how that works. No, we
Yeah.
have Pop Tarts and Kellanova and our staff, our marketing folks, and all. They meet probably twice a week all year long, and just no idea is a bad idea. It's that kind of a culture. We've always been that kind of a game. You look back to the days we had Verbo and then building vacation rentals on the field. We're open to anything as long as it doesn't take away from the players and their experience. And Pop Tarts has been a blessing. I've been in this 30 years. I don't remember a time where virtually everybody agreed. That was just fun. And so you look at the awards. I mean, I never heard of Grand Prix before, but you get it in cans. There's only 25 of them in the world given out, and one of them was for Pop Tarts. So,
awesome.
I mean, I think you've arrived when you've checked all those boxes. But that's where this has to go. You have to continue to go there. Cheez-It, our other partner. I mean, it's good to have edible, kind of partners. But I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a little freaked out. It was game week. Our team was like, "All right, we got this. We're gonna get edible mascot. We're gonna eat them." And I'm like, "Sounds great. Sounds great." We get there and you get a quiet moment and you sit back and say, "God, I wonder how." Wait a minute, I'm starting to get a little freaked out about how this thing. You start to do a few medias. How's this going to go down? Is this going to work? Or will you nibble the arm off? What's going to happen? And so sure enough, they pulled it off. I mean, he's holding the sign and he's dropping into this giant stadium-sized toaster, and these players just consume them. It was just match made and really heaven, Pop-Tart heaven. I mean, it was a blast. I mean, I can't wait to see 3 of them this year. MVP actually gets to pick. And how you do that in real time, again, this could go really bad, but I have a feeling this is just going to be another special moment in postseason.
Just more reason to watch. Really quick, and I would say this is like, that's what I think. Like, you guys seem to just really like. It's not. The reason it's on my mind is, I was talking to my mom. So I'm a UConn alum, as everybody who ever listens to this show knows. And UConn accepted an invite to a bowl game in Boston, and she was just kind of telling me, some of the stuff she's read about what they have to do. And it's not that it's not about football, but the ways that you can differentiate yourself, make you unique. I just feel like that's something that makes bowl season. It's a fun time of year. Everybody's in a good mood. Like that. That's just what makes bowl season fun.
It feels like it should. And we all need to lean into it more.
Sure.
If we can avoid, as long as we're not, again, cheapening the experience for the student athlete, you're respectful of that. These are great football games. but in and around it, you're sitting at home. It's Christmas to New Year's for the most part. You got some downtime. You're seeing some great football. But if you can be in the social sphere and just having fun with stuff like this, just puts a smile on your face, takes the stress off a little bit, gives you a break. The student athletes are having a blast with it. It's just, you look at them, they're their own NIL engines. They're their own marketers. They're their own social experts. And that engagement opportunity, I think all of us as fans, not only want to see them be great athletes, but you love watching them be just entertaining in general. And so seeing some of these players come into their own and engage with brands like Pop-Tarts and Cheez-It, man, that's where this has to go. And I think you're going to continue to see more fans, kids, youth, all the demographics are just going to say, wait a minute now, there's something special about the postseason. We get to playoff time, it's playoff time, but at the end of the day, I think the whole cornucopia of it is what people want to consume.
Poptarts Bowl, December 28th, Miami and Iowa State, and then South Carolina and Illinois battle in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, December 31st. Steve Hogan, Florida Citrus Sports CEO. Any last thoughts about the week that's coming up for you, your staff, the players, the fans, anybody that's coming to Orlando are going to be part of what you guys are doing?
Hey, just get your tickets now. They seem to be going pretty fast over the last couple of days, so it's a good year for that. And, let's just root these guys on. I mean, it's going to be so much fun. Let's send them off the right way. But this is going to be a light show. I have a feeling both of our games were blessed. I just feel like they're going to light it up. We're going to have to change light bulbs, and numbers are going to be flying, and balls going to be in the air. And so it's going to be a good year. But I appreciate the time, Aaron.
All right, that was Steve Hogan again, Florida Citrus Sports CEO. And again, Miami, Iowa State, South Carolina, Illinois. Those are two awesome games. As you said, Steve, all four were a game away from being in the college football playoff. They're going to be in Orlando. I know I can't wait to watch, and I know everybody listening can as well. Thank you for the time. Good luck. Good luck on the R&D on the mascot this year and everything that's going to go into the next couple weeks. But thank you for the time. We'll do it again soon.
All right.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Gonna be back. First of all, do want to thank Steve Hogan again, Florida Citrus CEO. Those two games sound, first of all, great matchups, great teams. Obviously, Iowa State playing for a conference title. Miami and South Carolina on the verge of a playoff. Illinois had a great season as well. So thank you to Steve for making time. And I cannot wait to see everything that they have planned for both the Cheez-It Bowl and the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando. One game that needs no hype. I'm, of course, talking about the Saturday night game in Columbus, Tennessee at Ohio State. So we previewed this game earlier in the show. But I want to take a moment to talk about something that popped on my radar Thursday afternoon as I was preparing for this show. Did you see that Ohio State basically put out a PSA begging fans to be nice at the shoe on Saturday? So let me, even before we put up the tweets, producer Matt, obviously, look, we kind of know it. I just think it's kind of a weird vibe. We had Zach Smith on the show earlier in the week talk about what is the vibe around Columbus. I don't get the sense that, I don't want to speak for Ohio State fans, I don't get the sense that everybody has completely put Michigan behind them. I don't get the sense that Ryan Day has completely regained the trust of the fan base. If anything, it's the opposite. I said it after the Michigan game, talked to some people around that athletic department shortly following that game, and I think everybody's kind of sentiment was, we just hope we can go on a run once we get to the playoff. Don't think it helped, by the way, that Ryan Day earlier this week said, hey, listen, that Michigan game didn't really matter. He didn't say that, but he basically said, listen, the goal was always the playoff. We're here. That's all that matters, which basically was like a weird way of saying, yeah, we lost as a 3-touchdown favorite to our rival at home, but you guys got to just ignore that. And so you have that going on. You have this story about Tennessee fans potentially invading the horseshoe for this game. It's a crazy time at Ohio State. But I saw this on Thursday afternoon, and I think it kind of speaks to Ohio State might be getting a little bit soft under Ryan Day, not just the team, but the entire athletic department. Producer Matt, pop up the tweet that Ohio State put out on Thursday afternoon. So this is from the official Ohio State Twitter account. First of all, there's a grammar error, which isn't a good look. But basically going into this game, and again, knowing that probably there's going to be a lot of Tennessee fans, whatever, Ohio State's official athletics Twitter account put out this tweet. Don't forget to be the best fans on Saturday. First of all, this is the typo. The acronym is Go Bucks, but the G stands for gracious and victory and defeat. So there's a little typo there. It should be gracious in victory and defeat. O is one community. So again, this is a message that the official athletic account put out. Don't forget to be the best fans in America on Saturday. Gracious in victory and defeat, one community, behave like champions, uphold traditions, create memorable moments, keep the standard of excellence, show respect to all. Now, on one hand, doesn't really mean much of anything, whatever, this and that. But let me ask you a question. Does this not feel like a direct message from Ohio State's athletic department that they are nervous about one of two things happening in Columbus on Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening? One, this is either Ohio State's official athletic department saying, hey, we're about to get invaded by Tennessee fans. Don't pick any fights in the stands with everybody coming from Rocky Top. Or two, what I actually think it probably means is, hey, if things go sideways, Ohio State fans, do us a favor. Don't boo our head coach, Ryan Day. But this, to me, speaks to where we are at Ohio State right now. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I do think when the official athletic department is basically putting out a PSA, begging fans to be nice, to me, that doesn't speak very well to where the tone and energy of the fan base is going into this game, right? Because think about the other 3-4, sites that are going to be hosting college football playoff games. Listen, there's great vibes at Penn State. Penn State has kind of always seen itself as a program that would benefit from the 12-team college football playoff. They'd maybe get a home game. They are. Notre Dame, I understand that there's going to be a lot of Indiana fans in that stadium, but Notre Dame, it's been a great year. Yes, you lose to Northern Illinois. To Marcus Freeman's credit, they bounce back. They get the victory, or they get a bunch of straight victories. They're 11-1. They're hosting a playoff game. Texas, it's the same vibe, right? You didn't win the SEC championship game, but you showed out well in year one in the conference. That is not the vibe I'm feeling from Ohio State. And to go back to what I said, the vibe that I really get out of that athletic department is I think that right now, everybody is just sort of on pins and needles. Everybody is sitting there saying, like, we need to win on Saturday and we need to look good on Saturday, because if not, this fan base will revolt. And by the way, Ohio State fans, that's not a criticism of you. I'm actually in agreement with you. I've said for years, Ryan Day has one of the cushiest jobs in college football. Don't give me his overall win-loss record. The 3 goals that he should have every single year: 1, beat Michigan; 2, compete for, and most of the time win, the Big Ten championship; and 3, compete for national championships. And I've said that consistently. I have been off the Ryan Day bandwagon. And I do think, by the way, it was a bad look earlier this week when Ryan Day came out and said, yeah, that Michigan game basically means nothing because the whole goal was the 12-team college football playoff. I don't want to hear it. For 4 straight years, you've lost to your biggest rival. Oh, by the way, for 4 straight years, you have not even made it to Indianapolis for the conference championship game. And so I think this sets up a very interesting scenario in Columbus. And I think this statement from the athletic department is basically their way of acknowledging, like, we think it could get pretty toxic if our team does not play well on Saturday. Beyond that, let me say this. I think it speaks to a little bit of an aura of softness around the entire program and the entire athletic department. Listen, you go back to the Urban Meyer era. Think Urban Meyer gave a crap if somebody booed him? No, Urban Meyer was like, screw you. I'll get in your face and boo you right back. Oh, by the way, we're going to beat everybody by 30, or we're going to beat the teams that matter by 30, so it doesn't matter. Listen, you can criticize Urban Meyer for whatever. Urban Meyer was kind of the anti-Ryan Day. He might take a loss to Purdue here and there. He might take a loss at Iowa. He ain't never losing to Michigan. He's winning his big games. And when he loses, there's going to be hell to pay. It's going to be, everybody's going to be locked in, and you are going to get the best, toughest version. And by the way, sometimes you're going to lose because the other team has more talent, but you're never going to lose because you got out toughed, because you got out physical, because you're trying to prove to your fan base, like Ohio State did 3 weeks ago against Michigan, that you can match their physicality when you can't. And so to me, this is a metaphor of like that toughness, both the literal physical toughness that Ohio State once had, feels like it's kind of gone at Ohio State. But beyond that, it's the mental toughness. It's the fact that the athletic department has to come out with a PSA and basically beg fans, hey, be nice to our head coach. Don't say anything mean. Oh, by the way, if you see some Tennessee fans, be nice to them too, because it's one big happy family. You think Urban Meyer, if he thought his stadium was getting invaded by another team's fan base, would say, oh, be nice? Be like, no, don't sell your tickets, yell in their face, make it uncomfortable, and let's make sure that they have the worst experience here possible. And so I'm not, to be clear, I'm not encouraging any sort of violence. I don't want to see fights in the stands, and I don't think Urban Meyer would either. But I think what Urban Meyer would say is, first of all, if their fans are even thinking about coming, that's embarrassing. We got to change that. But two, let's pummel them and put them out of their misery so that those fans can leave miserable and they can leave at halftime and they can get in the cars and go back to Tennessee. And so I bring it up because producer Matt, pop up the tweet one more time. Gracious in victory and defeat. Gracious in victory and defeat does that sound like Urban Meyer? Does that sound like Woody Hayes? Does that sound like what Ohio State football is? Gracious in victory and defeat. One community, okay. Behave like champions. What have you been champions of? You haven't won anything in 4 years. Haven't won the Big Ten since 2020. And you needed the league to pull strings to get you into the conference championship game. Behave like champions. Okay. Uphold traditions. That's cool. Create memorable moments. Yeah, you know what would create memorable moments? Beating Michigan. Beating the teams that matter. Winning Big Ten championships. Keep the standard of excellence. Yeah, that's been gone. Show respect to all. Listen, I'm not trying to criticize Ryan Day here. I'm just stating this kind of makes Ohio State look soft. I cannot believe they actually put that out there. All right, this is what we're going to do. The show's going long. Steve Hogan was awesome. But what I want to do, Steve Hogan was awesome. We talked about a lot of different stuff. We've covered a lot of ground. I do want to wrap with just one more thing because it's that time of year. It's pretty chill. We got to have fun. And so what I do want to wrap with was an old segment that we used to do once upon a time. We kind of stopped doing it because it doesn't really play on YouTube. But I figured it's fun. It's a fun time of year. But let's go ahead and bring back where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. For those of you who are new to the show, we used to do this every Friday to wrap the show, kind of just a fun way to kind of hit on some topics that we wouldn't normally get to. By the way, yes, I did steal this from my buddy Colin Cowherd. Colin does where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong every week. And I decided to bring it to the Aaron Torres pod for one very simple reason. It is because over the course of a week, a month, a year, you know Torres is spitting out a lot of hot takes on Twitter, on Instagram, on social media, on radio, on podcast. And so we do where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong, because you know that when I get stuff right, Torres loves to tell you, oh, Torres was right, Torres told you this, Torres told you that, whatever. But also here's the thing. Sometimes I get stuff wrong too, and that's when I got to give myself a little slap on the wrist. Let's get to it where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. Let's get to the things that I have been both right about and wrong about over the last couple months, where Aaron was right. So listen, this situation that we find ourselves in college sports with the transfer portal, with NIL, I told you it was coming 5-6 years ago. And listen, I'm not anti-NIL. I'm not anti-paying players. But if you could not see this coming, you're an idiot, okay? Because I remember saying, by the way, speaking of Tennessee, going on with Russ Smith in Knoxville, going on with Ryan Fowler in Tuscaloosa, and talking about the fact that if you have unregulated NIL, because for years, all I heard was, just pay the players, just figure it out. It's like, okay, well, what's to stop Texas or Texas A&M or whoever from paying a quarterback $5 million a year? Oh, that'll never happen. Well, it's happening right now, and we could have all seen it coming. I remember going on Ryan Fowler's show 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Remember when Bryce Young, he was coming up, or Bryce Young after that Heisman year? I remember telling Ryan Fowler, in this new era, what's to stop some school from offering him $10 million a year, get him in the portal and get him to your school? So this was all obvious, all the mess that college sports currently finds itself in. We could have all seen it coming, but nobody wanted to talk about it. Anytime you said anything, it was, oh, you hate the players and you don't want the players to get paid. Oh, look at the guy that's making money off of college athletes. Don't want them to get a piece of the pie. No, it's not that we don't want them to get a piece of the pie. It's that there are clearly things that need to be put into place before we just open the floodgates, pay players, let them go wherever they want, let them transfer as much as they want. So where Aaron was right, I told you this was going to be a mess. It is a mess. Where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. So listen, we are on the verge of the first ever 12-team playoff, and I just got to own it. I wasn't a proponent of expanding the college football playoff. My argument at the time was, listen, we are not including more teams that are capable of winning the championship. And I still, to a degree, believe that. I think there's 2 or 3 teams that can realistically win it. And my argument was, we struggled to get 4 teams into this playoff. Why are we going to expand to 12? Well, now we're here, and I'm kind of excited for Notre Dame, Indiana. I'm kind of excited for Texas, Clemson. I'm kind of excited for Ohio State, Tennessee, and, of course, Penn State, SMU as well. And, yes, I admit, SMU is not a team that can win a national championship. I don't think, Indiana is. Clemson certainly isn't. I don't know if Texas kind of is. Boy, but it's cool. And it's going to be fun. And me, like probably 10 million people, I'm going to be on the couch Friday night. Friday night's usually a family night around the Torres house. We, spend time with the wife, go out to dinner, whatever. I told her this Friday, I'm going to be watching Penn State, or I'm going to be watching Notre Dame, Indiana. That ain't going to change. Very excited for the 12-team playoff. I got to own it. I was dead wrong on that. Well, Aaron was right. Let's get back to things I was right about. Remember the NFL draft? Remember when the Atlanta Falcons decided to draft Michael Penix? And remember when everybody in the media freaked out? How can you do that? What are you thinking? And what did I say on this show? By the way, you know what pissed me off more than anything about that? Remember when Kirk Cousins, through his agent, started whining and was like, we need to draft guys that are going to help this team this coming year. Why are we wasting a first-round pick? And it's like, Kirk Cousins, you're getting $50 million. You just got there 10 minutes ago. Stop whining. Nobody knows who you are. And who's to say Michael Penix can't help you win games this coming year? Bottom line, Kirk Cousins, 35 years old, coming off Achilles. You might need Michael Penix. Well, as it turns out, they needed him quicker than anybody anticipated. Michael Penix will start this weekend for the Atlanta Falcons. Listen, we don't talk a ton of NFL, but we talked about it with the draft. I thought Kirk Cousins sounded like a whiny complainer when this all happened. I thought it made him look really bad. By the way, I'll take it a step further. I thought he actually looked really bad this week. He was asked about the whole situation. I want to find the quote that he said. This is what he says. I didn't forget how to play football. And it's such a slap in the face of Michael Penix. By the way, they're paying you $50 million and you still weren't good enough. It shows that you kind of stink. I was dead right on this. I didn't understand the backlash. Michael Penix will get his first career start on Sunday, where Aaron was wrong. Let's talk about a stunner in the portal. We talked about it on Tuesday's show. Zachariah Branch, former 5-star, enters the transfer portal at USC. USC's first recruiting class under Lincoln Riley in 2023 had 3 5-stars. All of them have transferred. Oh, by the way, he's supposed to be the offensive guru. Miller Moss is gone, and 3 of the top 5 receivers as well. Listen, I was wrong like everybody else in college football was wrong because I did not see this coming. I thought Lincoln Riley would come to USC. I thought he would change the program. I thought we would get back to the Pete Carroll days. It'd be awesome. No, they're arguably in as big of a mess, if not a bigger mess, than when Clay Helton left. You could argue Clay Helton left the cupboard bare, but this is now year 3, and most of Lincoln Riley's best recruits are gone. And so don't tell me Clay Helton left the cupboard bare, because there was plenty of time to restock the cupboard. He has not done that. Just cannot believe how bad Lincoln Riley has been. Like everybody else, I was dead wrong. Where Aaron was right. So about 5-6 years ago, I started something. I said the SEC basketball revolution. I called it that then. We talked about it on Sunday's show. I said SEC basketball 5-6 years ago. I said, this is coming. All these schools are investing. You got coaches like Rick Barnes at Tennessee, Bruce Pearl at Auburn. These schools, not so much Tennessee, but Auburn had never been good at basketball. Well, it's been heightened the last couple of years. Chris Beard at Ole Miss, Chris Jans at Mississippi State, I think is really good. Oklahoma looked awesome on Wednesday night. I was watching them play Michigan, Jeremiah Fears. I was not familiar with your game. Well, I bring it up because the SEC is so clearly the best conference in college basketball. I told you this was coming 4 or 5 years ago. I was mocked for it. Oh, Torres, you're an SEC honk. You're an SEC homer. No, all these schools are investing. NIL has certainly helped, but here we are. I think we're looking at a scenario where the SEC gets 12, 13 teams in the NCAA tournament. I don't think that's hyperbole. I don't know if they'll get to 13, but I think 11 is in play. You know, even teams like Missouri that nobody talks about, they just beat Kansas. Texas A&M that nobody talks about, they just beat Purdue. That's on top of Auburn. That's on top of Tennessee. That's on top of Kentucky. That's on top of Alabama. I was dead right on this. Where Aaron was wrong, let's talk UConn Huskies. Got to say, I think Torres may have given up on those Huskies a little bit too early. Now, I wasn't as negative about the Dan Hurley yelling and screaming at the refs. I don't care. And yes, it cost him a game in Maui. I'm never going to criticize my coach because he's won 2 national championships. That fire in his belly is what has allowed him to win back-to-back national titles. But I bring it up because Dan Hurley, UConn were a piñata after the Maui Invitational. Well, now I bring it up to say that I think I gave up a little too early because UConn, have you seen them? 5-0 since returning to Maui, okay? Since returning from Maui. That includes a win over Gonzaga at Madison Square Garden, a win over Baylor at home, a win at Texas, and on Wednesday night, they won their Big East opener against Xavier. Keep in mind, last 2 years, 1 national championships. They actually did not win their Big East opener in either. Last year, they lost to Seton Hall. It was one of their only 2 Big East losses. The year before, they lose, actually, ironically, to Xavier at Xavier. I bring it up because I, like everybody else, had sort of given up on the Huskies. I think I was wrong. Where Aaron was right. Let's go ahead and wrap the show on this because I'll tell you, I've been on this Adam Silver is a clown thing for years. The first time that I said Adam Silver is a clown, I remember, you can go back to 2017. You could probably find a tweet if you want to look hard enough. But Adam Silver vocally talked about wanting to remove the one and done rule, okay? And obviously I'm a college basketball guy, whatever. But his argument was so stupid. His argument was actually this. He said, I watched a Ben Simmons documentary. Remember, HBO or Showtime or one of those places did a documentary on Ben Simmons during his year at LSU. And the documentary, Ben Simmons was miserable because Ben Simmons, whatever. Ben Simmons, the point I'm trying to make is that Adam Silver was like, well, I saw this and it's clear that he shouldn't be in college and he shouldn't have to be there if he doesn't want to. And I'm going to use the word that everybody hates and it's going to piss people off, but it was kind of woke. It was kind of like, oh, these poor college kids' life is so tough. It's like Ben Simmons is playing basketball at LSU. Chill out. He's doing just fine. And so ever since then, I've been like, this guy's kind of a clown. And I've said publicly, I think he reads social media. I think he's too reactionary to social media. And I remember even saying in that era, I said, the NBA is a fundamentally worse product. And this was 5-6 years ago. I said, KD goes to the Warriors. Competitiveness is down. The All-Star game, nobody watches. Nobody cares. The players don't even try. And I said, what good has he brought to this league? Well, I bring it up because over the last couple weeks, some staggering numbers have come out on the NBA. Ratings down 48% since 2012. I told you this guy was a clown. The league gets worse every year. The league gets less watchable every year. Told you he was kind of a clown. He's been a clown. Adam Silver, what else is there to say? By the way, the ultimate where Aaron was right, I've been on the Ryan Day is a clown thing for 2 years as well. We don't have to put it up on the screen, producer Matt, but I said 3 years ago, I said he's soft. His teams play soft. And it's been proven time and time again. Now, Ohio State's putting out PSAs to make him feel good about himself. All right, tell you what, I got to get out of here, man. We're on an hour and a half at this point. If you are not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, make sure to do so. I mean, who gives you an hour and a half of content like that? Make sure you're subscribed. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, make sure to do that. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All for today's show. We'll be back Sunday. I don't know when. It will not be a night recording, just some complications with the schedule, whatever. But I'll do a show Sunday after the college football playoff, maybe even talk a little bit college basketball as well. Time for me to go. Appreciate everybody's support. We'll be back soon. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. I'll be back Sunday night, Sunday day. Aaron Torres Pod.